It seems like it was not a draw. It seems like it was a win, right? Well, here's where I need your help, chess kids. Yes, this is one of the few videos where I'm actually announcing that I need your help. The only good part about getting sick as a kid is that when you stay home from school, you get to watch a lot of game shows on the couch. Oh yeah, and Mom's grilled cheese as well. Who doesn't like a good game show? Well, today we're going to continue with another edition. Okay, actually, the first edition of Draw or Not. I'm going to give you a chess position. You have to tell me if the weaker side can hold a draw or not. That would mean, of course, that they're losing. Okay, so queen versus rook in a totally normal position. There's no rook skewer or anything like that. Is it a draw or not? Well, actually, it's not. It's a win. White can win, but you have to really know what they're doing. I am not going to show you every single move to get the king to the edge of the board, but I am going to fast forward to bam! This is the most problematic position that I see. I even have trouble defeating a computer, although again, it is a winning position, queen versus rook. This is black's best defense. When the rook gets to b7, it keeps her king out of that square, keeps her king out of that square, and the rook is holding off the white army for the moment. What we really want to do is essentially waste a move in this position, because if we can get the king and the rook to separate themselves, then we have a much better chance of forking the king and the queen, or our own king invading, of course. So here's the technique. We're going to play queen check. Now, it'd be very silly if black blocked with the rook, because then, bam, checkmate, and we'd be moving on to our next position. So let's give black a little bit of a bigger brain and have black play king to a7. Now, I want you to play queen check. And again, the king should not move down, because that would be another checkmate. So black has to be on guard for that. And black should probably play king to the square b8. Now, we're going to play queen to h8 check, forcing the king to a7. Then our queen goes to the square d8. And this is the kind of position that you have to engineer. Sometimes your queen has to move all around the board, wasting a move to try to get to this type of position where it is black's move, because no matter what black does, black has to separate the king and the rook, or otherwise lose the rook. Now, you might say, from Mr. Mike, my king can move here and keep guarding the rook. And of course, that's true, but I can play queen to c8, which pins your rook to your king. I'm going to win your rook on the next turn. So you pretty much have to move your rook here, and when you do, all roads eventually lead to a fork. For example, if the rook moves to g7, let's go ahead and highlight that square. Can you find a fork? I'm sure you can. Queen to d4 would fork the king and the rook. Now, we're not going to go over every single possible rook move here. We're just going to pick one. Let's say the rook goes to b1. We're going to play this one out. After rook to b1, I like the move queen to d4 check. It's not the only way to win, but I think it's the quickest. Now, the king moves down. We have another sideways checkmate. No problem at all. Okay, let's have the king move to a better square. Let's say the king moves to b8, okay? King to b8. What do we do in this position? Well, now our queen goes all the way up to h8 to give check. And when the king moves down, our queen moves down to h7, and like magic, the queen checks the king and wins the rook, as you can see. Let's give one more move for black if we go back to this position. The king could have moved to a8, and now the winning idea is actually the same. The queen goes back to a8, and remember, if the king moves down, we still have queen to h7 check. And if the rook blocks in this occasion, our queen swoops all the way down to the corner of the board for a checkmate. So it's not the easiest checkmate, and ChessKid, you're going to want to practice this one a lot. We do have it in the ChessKid computer workout section. It's a tough one, but it is a winning. So if you guess draw, well, stay on the couch a little bit longer, eat Mom's grilled cheese, because it was not a draw. Okay, moving on to our next one. What have we done? We've given white 4 pawns. By the way, they are moving up the chessboard. And we've given white a bishop. In fact, you cannot see my screen, but the computer says that white is better, plus 3.6. Now, if you've got a 3.6 advantage in almost any other position, that's like being up a piece and a pawn. That's totally winning in 99.9997 positions, okay? But you know what? This is not one of them. This is the computer just being confused. This is draw. If you guessed draw, you are correct. Mom's grilled cheese is making me smarter because the black king, when he gets to the corner, there's nothing that all these h-pawns can do. Don't believe me? Well, let's play some moves. h6, the king runs to the corner. Now you can move your own king up, no problem. The king just hangs out. In fact, the defense for black is super simple. The king just goes back and forth. You literally cannot mess this up. If you were a robot and you were told to just move back and forth from g8 to h8, that would all you would need to be programmed to make a draw in this position. King to g6, king to g8, and now what to do? What to do? I don't know. Bishop to c4? Well, then king just goes to the corner. And then if you push your pawn, well, you can see the computer announce that it's a draw. It's stalemate. What else could you do in this position? Let's go back. Maybe in this position, you play check with your pawn. Then the king moves here. And if you keep pushing your pawns, well, guess what? That's stalemate as well. I'm actually not even sure why the computer's not announcing it, but trust me, it's stalemate, okay? In fact, in this position, if you want to unstalemate your opponent, you'd have to move your king to give him an escape square, but if you move your king backward and give him an escape square, you're not really accomplishing anything. The king's just going to go back and forth and back and forth. I'm erasing the arrows, I'm drawing the arrows, I'm highlighting squares, I'm unhighlighting squares. You get the point. The extra pawns don't matter. The pawn goes up, so what? If the pawn goes up, guess what? That's another stalemate. Yes, you're always stalemating, so that was the draw. Okay, let's move on to our third position. But Master Mike, you've given me this position. No, I actually haven't. It's white to move. Is it a draw or not? Okay, maybe you're thinking, Fun Master Mike, you're just testing to see if I was fast forwarding to this position and I missed the previous one and I didn't do any learning, so it obviously is a draw. Ooh, but I tricked you. It's kind of my job. In this position, is the king actually getting to the corner? Well, not if white plays perfectly. There's exactly one winning move here for white. You've got to stop the king from getting to the corner. Pushing the pawn, which I know is really, really tempting, it's not going to get the job done because now black can move the king to f7. And of course, he's about to get to g8 and get to the corner. Now, maybe you're thinking, oh, I'll play bishop check and stop him from going to g8. Well, that's true. Then the king goes to g6 and gobbles up your pawn. So the only way to win, if we go back to our starting position, is to play bishop c4 on move 1, because that, of course, prevents king f7. The king has to rush to the corner. He can't go to g8, though, because the bishop attacks that square as well. He's about to go to g7, but then pawn h6 stops him from getting to g7. By the way, king f6 would have also won you the game, but pawn h6 is actually faster because black has to move, and unfortunately, the black king has to move to the left, to the left, to the right, to the right. Okay, not that song. The song gives you options, but in chess, in this position anyway, there are no options. You have to go to the left, to the left. The king goes to the left, you just push your pawn, and you can very easily see the black king is running back, but he's too late. White gets a queen. So that was a bit of an exception. I don't want you to always think that if you have a side pawn and if your bishop is the wrong color of the promotion square, that it's always a draw, because sometimes you can keep the king away from the promotion square and you can still win. By the way, I do want to note, if we go back, just in case this is your first time seeing this, if we had put the bishop on a dark square, then white is winning in all scenarios, because when your bishop can guard the promotion square, the win is trivial. When I say trivial, I don't mean trivia. In this case, trivial means easy. Okay, so let's go on to our fourth position. Ooh, what about this one? Rook and bishop versus rook. Draw or not? What do you think, chess kids? Shout your answer at the screen. I can't hear you. Wait, you're shouting too loud. You're waking up the neighbor's dog. In this position, it actually is a draw. However, I'm going to give you a very important caveat. Caveat is not a cavity. That's what you don't want to see. A cavity is when you don't brush your teeth, but a caveat means an exception, or really it means an additional thing that I want to say. This is a draw with best play, but it turns out the defensive task for black is so difficult that white actually wins a very high percentage of these chess games. I'm not going to go into it because it would actually take about 20 or 30 more minutes. In fact, when I was growing up, my chess coach once came to my house. We studied this endgame for 2 hours, and we still did not memorize every single thing that we needed to know. So I want you to know, if you ever get rook and bishop versus rook, while it is technically a draw, the winning chances are very good for the side with the bishop, of course, so you should play it out. If you're black, you have the not very fun task of having to defend for 50 moves before you can earn the draw. Okay, definitely one worth practicing, but definitely one we can't get into today. Let's move on to our next position. Whoa! What have we done? We've given white 2 extra rooks and an extra bishop. Surely it is winning, Actually, it is not winning, and don't call me Shirley, because I'm Fun Master Mike. It's actually not winning. It is a draw. For those of you who guessed draw, you are correct. Now, you might be thinking, oh, but Fun Master Mike, I'll just play rook to b3, and then when the pawn takes, I'll rush over, I'll win that pawn, I'll eventually push this pawn, and I'll get a pass pawn, and I'll win the game. Well, these are all great thoughts, but of course there's one big caveat. Oh yeah, there's that word again. When you play rook to b3, black will just not take. All black has to do in this position is move the king over and over and over for 50 moves. If black never touches any of his pawns and just moves the king, you can never force your opponent to capture, and the bishop, of course, can't help either because the bishop's on the wrong color. If your bishop was on a light square, you would very happily sacrifice for a pawn just to create an opening, but the bishop is on the wrong square. You might be thinking, Fun Master Mike, you did this on purpose. Why, yes. Yes, I did do it on purpose. Thank you for noticing, okay? Of course, the king can't help either, because if the king walks up, the king can't exactly sacrifice himself. That would be Captain Silly Pants and not allowed. So, in this position, you can move your rook here, and you can offer both rooks, very funnily enough, and black is just not going to take either of them. In fact, another funny story, you can't see my screen, that the computer is saying that white is +5, which is kind of doubly crazy because, number one, white is not +5. It's totally equal, but the computer just can't see that far ahead. And number two, if the computer can't see that far ahead and it's just thinking about material, well, white actually has 2 rooks and a bishop. 5 + 5 + 3 is 13. So the computer should either say that white is ahead +13, or that it's 0.00 because the computer should see that it's a draw, but not +5. That is the computer just being Captain Silly Pants. All right, so this is a draw as long as black never touches any of the pawns and black moves the king for 50 moves. Remember, if you play 50 moves and nobody makes a capture or a pawn move, the game is a draw, and that is what black should do. Okay, we come to our final position. This was actually a position shown to me by Grandmaster Melik Kashian, one of my good friends. Used to do some commentary with him, and this one's crazy. In fact, I have to tell you that I know if it's a draw or not. I just don't exactly know how to accomplish one or the other. Okay, if that's a confusing statement, let me just go ahead and say it. That Grandmaster Melik announced that it is a win for white. It is not a draw, even though it looks like it's very similar to the previous position. It looks like in this position, you're going to be locked in, because even though I gave white some knights, well, that knight has no legal moves, and that knight has no legal moves. And if you move the rook up, black never has to capture, so what's different? Well, actually, the queen is what's different, because the queen can force a capture. But notice, if that knight has no legal moves, the queen eventually has to move to a2. And if you move that queen to a2 too quickly, you actually lose the game, because now black will take, and black's pawn will get to the other side and make a promotion. In fact, let's just give white a move. Let's just say white plays a move like rook to g2 or something. Black will play pawn a1, queen, and the problem in this position is the queen is just going to backtrack. She's going to go to a2, and then b3, and then c2, and your king is going to get mated. So that would be a giant mistake. We definitely don't want to lose this game, okay? Now, I've come up with something very close to the answer, okay? In this position, you can actually play king to d1. Now, black's just going to move around. We don't have to focus on black's moves at all. And then eventually, we're going to offer our rook. Of course, black would be very silly to capture. If black captures, we would capture back. We would rush our pawn down the board, and either we'd get a queen or our rook would get in the game. In any case, I'll just show you very, very easily winning. Black makes a king move. We push our pawn, and our pawn's going to get to the other side. Or if black takes, our rook takes, and our rook comes up, and we start taking pawns, and white wins the game super easily. So if we go back, after rook to g2, black should not take. Black should just move the king around. Then our king can move back and allow our rook to move again. And again, black should not take because the king moves to f2, gobbles up that pawn, and then white's d-pawn can rush forward and make some progress. So black should just move the king. Then our rook moves back, and then our king moves, and then our rook moves back, and we're actually making some progress here. In this position, we play the amazing rook to c2. And again, black should not capture. I know it looks crazy, but if black captures, then our king moves. We're finally able to push our d-pawn. We're finally able to start moving our knights. Then our rook gets in the game, and white can start making use of all of the extra pieces. So if we go back, black should not take. Black should play king to b5. Then we play king to c1, and then black should play king to b6. Now, it is in this position that we've come to our critical idea. My idea was to play queen to a2.
Hello.
And I thought I'm just winning, because if black moves the king, we take. I know it looks crazy to give away our queen, but no matter which way black takes back, whether it's this way or this way, then one of our pawns is free to move, allowing our knight to get in the game, and trust me, all of our pieces will end up getting freed up. And now, my genius idea, or at least I thought it was, is that when the queen gets captured, then we play pawn to b4. Discover attacking this pawn. By the way, it doesn't make too much sense if black plays en passant. The main line is for black to promote to a queen. But then we play this amazing idea, rook to b2, which totally traps the queen. Now black has to go back to moving his king. And the idea here is actually to put black in Zugzwang. Remember that term? That means your opponent would like to pass the turn, but he or she is not allowed to. Now black's going to play king b5 to block your pawn, but white has an unlimited number of waiting moves with this rook. This rook over here on h1, who's been hanging out doing nothing, can just play rook to g1. And the problem for black is that the queen has no good moves. Anywhere she moves, she gets captured. And when the king moves, that releases the pawn. Let's say the king moves to c6, boom! And our pawn is going to go downtown. Now, although black can play king b6, remember, we have an unlimited number of waiting moves. This rook on g1 just goes back to h1. And the black king, sadly for him, has to move again. We push our pawn again. And when the king moves, push your pawn again. And when the king moves, we just slide our rook back to g1. And finally, black is in giant Zugzwang. If he moves the king, we promote to a queen with check very, very easily winning. And if you finally give up your queen for the rook, let me show you how white would win this. King takes, and there is a way to activate this rook. It's going to be a long process. Now, don't give away the rook right away. Black will actually take and then promote to a queen and be winning. So we're going to move our king all the way back into the neighborhood. Then we play the move rook to g2. Of course, if black takes, we take back, we push our h-pawn. We've already seen something similar. And if the king goes to b6, then our king snakes around. We play rook to e2. Again, if the pawn takes, the king goes to f2. We eventually get our rook into the game. We move our king closer just to make sure if the rook gets captured here, that our king can capture back. And when the king moves, our rook finally achieves the open file, gets to b4, starts capturing pawns, and white is able to win. So, it seems like it was not a draw. It seems like it was a win, right? Well, here's where I need your help, chess kids. Yes, this is one of the few videos where I'm actually announcing that I need your help. We're going to hit the way, way, way back button to the point where white offered the queen. Let's say that black takes and we play b4. But in this position, black is not rushing to get a queen. And instead, black actually takes your rook. Oh no, we needed that rook to be able to trap this queen when it promoted. Now the problem is after king takes and black promotes to a queen, it's not going to be so easy to trap that queen. So I'm not sure how white is still able to win. Do I trust my grandmaster friend that there is a win? Yes, I do. But have I found it? Not quite. So chess kids, if we go all the way back to our starting position, I think I've only solved about 90% of this puzzle. You need to help me out with the other 10%. Somehow white is winning, but I need your help in figuring out how. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the first edition of Draw or Not. And although game shows are fun when you're homesick from school, chess kids, please stay healthy out there. We want you to stay healthy, wealthy, and wise.